I am Jerome Jerry Wild Horse McGahan. Not McGann like it reads on my tombstone. Really appreciate the folks for giving me a tombstone. Kind of wish they would have spelled my last name correctly. But anyway, I came out to Colorado, really fell in love with this state when I was laying railroad for the Union Pacific Railroad from Denver to Cheyenne. Loved the state so much, I decided to stay, went into the wild horse business, basically capturing wild horses and selling them around the country. And I became real successful at it because I developed an interesting technique. You see, I'd approach the horse herd and was sure that I was seen by the lead stallion. I'd make myself real obvious because I knew that lead stallion would lead his herd away from me. The trick was, I knew where all the good grazing land was. I knew where all the watering holes were. And I would purposely steer the herd away from those areas. So the horses over time would become hungry, thirsty. So they'll be a little bit weaker. Easy to herd into a box canyon where I'd set up a temporary corral, rope them up, put them on a transport, and ship them to wherever they wanted, wherever they were going to be sold. And that's how I earned my nickname, Wild Horse. Love this area so much because that's what brought me out to this area. I bought a homestead north of New Raymond. And a young, rough kid that passed came along named Walt Rising. I took Walt under my wing, taught him trade, showed him how to work. We got along real good. Matter of fact, Walt even bought property adjacent to mine. However, over the years, the relationship kind of soured and reached the point that Walt one time threatened that if I ever crossed his property, he would kill me. I didn't take that too seriously, at least not at the time. But on July 23rd, 1910, I needed to go to Sterling. And as coincidence, so did my neighbor, Ida Mae. Because you see, Ida Mae, she was blind. And she had broken her dark glasses that protected her sensitive eyes. So she needed to go to Sterling to get a new pair. So we jumped in my right wagon, started heading out to Sterling. Unfortunately, the quickest route to Sterling crossed Walt's property. And I did not take that threat very seriously. I really, really should have. Because as we were crossing, we'd go by a low wall. Walt jumped up, fired 2 shots. First shot hit and killed Ida Mae. The second shot hit and killed me. That spooked the horse that was pulling the wagon. The horse went wild. The wagon hit a fence post, tipped over, and that's where they found us. And that is, unfortunately, the end of my story.
Good afternoon, under the direction of the firm Jackson and Hamilton, who have prepared us for burial. Many folks from the New Raymond and Sterling attended the Tuesday funeral service, and wake held at the home of the Huffman brothers on Poplar Street. The home is now across the street from Walmart. A group of men stood outside the home for quite a spell following the service, sharing stories of their old friend. Lee Witherby was said to have commented, "I know both Jerry and Buffalo Bill very well. Buffalo Bill had more brain, but Jerry had more heart." Another said, "Bill was cold, courageous, and spectacular, but Jerry was fearless, untiring, and unassuming."
And I was born in a log cabin in Kirksville, Missouri. And to give you a historical perspective, 1861 is when Abraham Lincoln started his office as president. It was also the start eventually of the Civil War. But I grew up to be a school teacher. And in 1888, when I was 27 years old, I came to Sterling, Colorado. And then 2 years later, in 1890, I married my first husband, S.A. Burke, B-U-R-K-E. And he was an early lawyer here. We were married for 15 years, and in 1905, he died. Well, here I was 44 years old, and I had 2 small children. I could go back, I had to have a job. I could go back to teaching, but I wanted to change. So the position for postmaster came up. I applied and I got it. And for 8 years, I was the postmistress. That was under Theodore Roosevelt and Howard Taft's administrations. I also started to remarry. I had remarried a man named H.W. Corkin. My maiden name was Corbin. His name is Corkin, very similar. Corkin. Anyway, he was the owner and operator of a lumber yard here. And my kids grew up, and I was busy being a wife, a mom, a postmistress. But I was never too busy that I wasn't very involved in the community. And I was deeply involved with the Methodist Church. I helped start a women's Christian temperance group union here. And in the 1870s, when that particular organization was started, there was a great deal of drunkenness in saloons, in the streets, and in the homes. And you may think it has gone away, but there's still a union, temperance union. I also was helped start the PTA, Parent Teacher Association here in Sterling. Then in 1928, when I was 67, I joined with my DAR, Daughters of American Revolutionary Sisters, and helped write the history of Logan County. Now, some people were not exactly happy with me because my standards were very high and not everybody made the grade into the book. Life went on, and I decided you're never too old to learn something new. And so in 1932, at age 71, I learned how to drive a car. 7 years later, I compiled the history of the Methodist Church. At age 80, I took up oil painting. And then I had been here for like 50 plus years here in Sterling, and I decided I needed a change. I moved to California to live with my daughter. And I lived a good long life to 103. Now, what's a little confusing when you're looking for my headstone is I am buried with my first husband, Burke, with the Burke family, and not with my second husband.
Saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. My brother, William J. Powell, wrote letters back home to me in Alabama about his wonderful new life out west. My name is Sarah Elizabeth, or Lizzie. I couldn't wait to come west. I arrived in 1878 when I was just 15 years old, and I was rather disappointed to find my brother's house near Marino was just a small sod hut with sunflowers growing out of the roof. I married Horace Bain, or H.B. Davis, who was the station agent for the Union Pacific Railroad. Within a few short years, he built me a new home at the corner of South 3rd and Ash Streets. This beautiful home was a carbon copy of my childhood home back in Alabama. We had 4 children together. I led the charge in bringing art and culture to this small prairie town. Although I was not formally trained in fine arts, I enjoyed painting, music, and theater. Many of my paintings hang in the Overland Trail Museum. I served as choir director at the First Presbyterian Church from 1902 until my death in 1934. My obituary stated this about me. It has been said that Mrs. Davis laid the foundations for Sterling's present musical development. She was a natural musician, a painter by instinct, a lover of the dramatic arts. Her greatest delight, perhaps, was in sacred music. Hundreds have found a new depth of meaning in the psalms as set to music, and thousands have thrilled to the perfection of harmony which she has produced with virtual amateur choruses. As a final act of devotion, the pallbearers at my funeral were the men of the First Presbyterian Church Choir.
Could have been another show to
At a very young age, my brothers and myself, Horace and Joseph, traveled with our mother, Sarah Lizzie Davis, in the Orpheum Circuit in the leading theaters from 1896 to 1898. We are amongst the most popular child actors of our time.
I once was lost, but
Was blind, but now I see.
Short and sweet, I am William C. Harris. I was said to have been a kind and gentle giant. I gifted many gifts to youngsters, including calves to young boys so they could start herds of their own. In the 1920s, I'm responsible for building the small cabin out at Pioneer Park. Originally, the Campfire Girls met there, and eventually the Girl Scouts of America met there. In fact, they still hold their troop meetings there today. My sister Belle and I were responsible for planting the first trees at Pioneer Park, and she's actually the one who came up with naming it Pioneer Park, so credits to Belle. When I was in 1940, at the age of 70, I died while working at my desk. Hanging on the wall above me was this motto: "They dreamed and had visions, and they came true." That motto characterized my life, and it's engraved in perpetuity on this tombstone here. It's rather hard to see, but it's also now part of the mural downtown behind the old depot in downtown Sterling. So if you go down there and see that train painting, you'll see that very motto there. The original framed motto that was in my office is now on display at the Overland Trail Museum.
I'm Sam Ard. Even though I'm buried here in the cemetery, my exact grave remains unmarked, unknown to this day. I came to Sterling in 1887, and I ran the Central Hotel downtown until 1907. I was somewhat of an inventor. I was proud to say that I owned one of the first automobiles in Sterling. It was a 1903 Oldsmobile. I later converted the motor out of that to run a power plant at my hotel. I also put together the first telephone and switchboard, which I installed in the lobby of my hotel. I embraced technology. I had one of the first tractors in Sterling, worked on my farm, and I also motorized one of my wheat headers to run off a gasoline engine, which saved the horses. I was married to a wonderful woman by the name of Susanna. I had one son named Claude. 1932, my wife, Susanna, passed away, and in 1934, suffering from a broken heart and loneliness, I decided to take my own life. I left the following note. Sam had glasses. I am in the garage. Conditions are such that I don't care to live longer, and they are not getting any better. So goodbye to all. Dora and Ora can help to give you some good advice in matters, as they have been very kind to me. Tell Sammy goodbye. He has always been so good to me. Tell all of my friends goodbye. It is 10 a.m.
My name is James Franklin Watts. I was born in Iowa in 1836. I served in the military from 1861 to 1865. My beautiful wife, Mary Elizabeth, myself, our boys, 2 cows, a horse, and a dog, made the journey out to Sterling in 1886. I originally filed a homestead about 5 miles northwest of here, but we moved into town the following year. I was a carpenter by trade. I loved building things with my hands, and I was good at it. But when we moved to Sterling and started to settle, we decided to try something new. So my wife and I opened a grocery store, a giant grocery store, and we wanted to name it something you'd never forget. So we called it the Elephant's Grocery. People loved the store, and we sold everything. They loved it so much, and I guess they loved me too, because I was elected as one of the very first county commissioners. Unfortunately, my term didn't last very long. I've only served for about 5 months. I was out riding one day toward the rock quarry, to inspect some stone that we're going to use in the new county courthouse. It was a windy day, beautiful but windy. You know Sterling, it's always windy around here and it can get crazy sometimes. A gust of wind blew my hat clean off. There's my good hat. I wasn't about to lose it, so I jumped off my horse, tried to get it, but the wind blew it everywhere, here and there. I was avoiding some cacti, leaping over some cow pies, and all of a sudden, sharp pain in my left shoulder, and it moved to my chest, and I died right there in the dirt. Unfortunately, I never saw that courthouse get built, and my favorite hat is probably in Nebraska. My original tombstone is on display at the Overland Trail Museum. When I was reburied here at the Riverside Cemetary, the marker was left behind. Y'all take care and guard your hearts.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is the gravesite of my dear father, Alan Sanders, and my name is Georgia. In 1874, my family made ready to come to Weld County in the Colorado Territory from Oxford, Mississippi. We sheared the sheep and picked cotton and then spun and wove the cloth to make bedding and clothing and rag carpets. From butchered hogs, we cured the meat and canned sausage. We dried peaches and apples from our fruit trees and picked beans and black-eyed peas to take along too. All of these supplies were then loaded into wagons to be hauled to the railroad station for the long journey ahead. My family of 8, along with Papa's sisters, Charity and Dorcas Kate, boarded the immigrant train to head west. 3 other families joined us on our journey. They were the King family, the Tidwells, and the Probst family. We homesteaded about 5.5 miles northeast of present-day Sterling. Later on, my sister, Charity, went on to marry William S. Hatfield.
Is William Shaw Hatfield, but you can call me Billy. As an adventurous 25-year-old, I came to America from Derbyshire, England. I stayed a while in Wisconsin, but the West called me, however, and I journeyed on to Denver, Colorado. I lived there a few years before heading on to Greeley, and from there I hitched up my 6 oxen and journeyed to what would become Logan County. When I reached the South Platte River on April 15, 1871, I found an island to my liking. I pitched my tent there and named it Serinda. As the lone settler, I enjoyed my solitude for a few months, but it wasn't long before it began to get a little crowded, with all sorts of people moving in around me. I suppose I began to like the company. We built a post office, and people would gather on my island for a good time. We even had some famous visitors, such as Chief Sitting Bull and Chief Red Cloud. It was high time I took a wife, and when I met Miss Charity Sanders, who had come to Colorado with her family from Mississippi, I knew she was the one. We wed, and we moved my livestock, mostly sheep and cattle, up to our new ranch about where Pete's is now. We had no children of our own, but with all of our extended relatives in the area, we were affectionately known as Uncle Billy and Aunt Charity in the community.